Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman here, as always, with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Well, Tony, this is our 300th show, but really, I wasn't on the first couple dozen of those, so I'm not sure if those are technically canon. So is this really our 300th show, or is this like our 270 something show?
Well, do you know for a fact when you actually started or not? Or should we just count this as 300 and forget like the early shows existed and just back write you in?
Just retcon me into those
Yes.
first shows?
Yes. I remember you there.
Shannon who? What? No. No. We miss you, Shannon. We do. We miss you. Yeah, I can go back and look exactly how many episodes. I remember I started, my first show was when we were down at the Cotton Bowl, and we did it in the Radio Row room at the Cotton Bowl, where there was literally no one else, because it turns out when you're at a game like the Cotton Bowl and USC's there, no LA media cares if they're not in the Rose Bowl. So there was no one else there. So that was our first show for the Cotton Bowl, right when we were trying to figure out if Denzel Ward was going to play or not.
Yes. And also when we covered another Pac-12 bowl game, there weren't a lot of Oregon media at the Rose Bowl either. So I don't know if that's just a thing because they're all, you know how it is on the West Coast. They've got their beaches and their wine and stuff like that. They can't be bothered by sports.
Sir, perhaps you are not familiar with a place called Buckeye Lake. There are beaches and wineries here in Ohio. And for the record, that was episode 20. So this is either episode 300 or episode 181. One of those. 281.
Now who's bad at math?
It me.
So yeah, well, we didn't plan anything for the 300th show. Should we plan something for the next 300th? Or
are we pretending we're going to plan something?
See, might as well just go. This is the 300th episode.
Yeah,
Welcome
it's
everybody.
Fine. Yeah,
it's I wouldn't call it an extravaganza. What's a normal ganza?
Just a ganza.
It's just a ganza.
Tony Ganza. Tony Ganza, our special guest.
It's just a vaganza.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, Tom, it is Indiana week. The big news of the day, and I'll let you just rant and rail and give us your thoughts on this. The news coming down this week, I think today even or yesterday. In fact, that no family at the games anymore for players or coaches, and the stands will be empty. I understand that Ohio Stadium isn't the biggest place, so it's you don't want to have too much of a crowd in there. But now with no family in there, it's not that you could hear the family, but it's going to be now just completely empty, like a closed scrimmage, basically. And you feel bad for the families who have fought done what they can to make this season happen, to have been a part of making this season happen. And then here in Columbus to be told, like, no, you're not, we can't risk you spreading COVID, getting COVID, creating COVID, selling COVID in the stands.
Do not sell COVID. That is actually part of Governor DeWine's latest order. Do not do it. This just seems really unfair and really. I'm not sure what the percentage of this decision was that is legitimately, we are deeply concerned that COVID will be spread in this area versus we need the perception to be that we are taking this very seriously. Because I counted, if you include all the sections of D deck and B deck and South Stands, there are 115 sections in the stadium. If you told the Ohio State football parents, you have two choices. You can not come to the game, or you can sit with one family per section of the stadium. And I'm very sorry that someone has to sit in the upper corner of D deck or in the upper corner of South Stands. But this is what we have to do. I'm sure that they would all choose to do that. And I don't think there is a remotely plausible discussion to be had that there is a real concern that if someone is sitting in row 13 of A deck and someone is sitting in row 2 of A deck, that there is any kind of likelihood of spread from one person to the other. And there's more than 13 rows in each section. I mean, you can be spaced so much further out in Ohio Stadium if it's just your families and the families of the opposing team than you can virtually anywhere else on Earth. And if they're all wearing masks and they're all, sitting where they're supposed to be sitting, there's no reason. You don't have to have them in just two sections. They have people in like just two sections right now. You don't have to do that. You can put them wherever you want to. I mean, you can just move a couple cardboard cutouts over and it'll be fine. Like you can put them wherever you want to. This just seems like one of those like, this will just be a good message to send to everyone. It's like, that's not really what this needs to be all about. You don't really have to do that. You can handle this a different way. And at the same time, let's just take everyone off equally. If you're one of the people who thinks that, well, I don't want to follow the rules because I don't like the rules. The rules are the rules. And one of the reasons things are not great right now is because people have decided that not all the rules apply to them. So if you're one of the people that doesn't want to follow the rules, consider following the rules. Because the people who are the maddest about this right now are probably also some of the people who have helped contribute to making it happen. So just consider that. Just throwing it out there.
And thank you for doing that, Tom. And as people now, I can hear everybody just clicking the show off. Just click, 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 click. I'm angry. First about your first take, then about your second take. But you know what? It's okay to just listen to what other people say and not get super angry about it and not try to. Tom, now you're going to get me going down a rabbit hole where you've got one group of people who hate cancel culture until it comes to something that has now offended them. And now they're like, yeah, I'd like to get you canceled. So either you hate cancel culture or you don't. But Tom, getting back to this, we'll just start the show over. I don't care. We'll just start over and this will never.
Welcome to our 301st episode. Yes.
But regarding like putting family in each section, one family or two families per section, one family per section, I would think maybe like lottery would be best, but you can't put a family from Florida up in D-deck, not in the corner. That's where you would put, I don't know, the Hobbiels, because they're from Buffalo. So they're like, if you are accustomed to the lake effect, then sorry, you're up in D-deck because you've got thicker blood. If you're from the South and you have thin blood, we're going to have to put you down as close to the field as possible because you can't handle these 40-degree days. Are you crazy, Tom? You'll get people killed.
Counterpoint. D-deck is closer to the sun. For a day game.
True.
Because top of D-deck, you tend to get like altitude sickness up there. It's like you get the bends coming down those stairs. It's like, oh, this is higher than I remembered. Every time I go down those stairs, I'm like, wait a minute, this is like 3 more flights of stairs than I remembered.
I should not be higher than the snipers.
Yeah. and yet here we are.
So we did talk to Ryan Day today briefly. He was also on his radio show. During his radio show, he mentioned Legend Cavazos has been practicing well. So that tells us he's back to getting close in terms of, I don't know, I'm sure they'd love to play him this week, but I don't know that Indiana will allow that. Blake Hobbiel is a day-to-day. Not sure if he'll be back this week. We'll maybe find out tomorrow, or he may be listed as a game-time decision on Friday. If Blake Hobbiel isn't back, it'll be Jake Seibert kicking field goals. I still would like to see him get a shot. Like, we know what Blake can do, and hopefully he's back, but I'd like to, if Jake Seibert's going to be out there, let's see him kick it. Although I think in my game pick, I hope I turned mine into Mark. I really did. I believe I did. I'm expecting maybe like a missed field goal, so I went with touchdowns only. I think it was like 42 points or something instead of a 45 or 38 in there.
What did you pick as the score? Because I know what I picked as a score, and mine starts with a 42 as well. And I'm going to be real annoyed if we've picked the exact same score again this week.
I think I went 42-20.
Oh, good. I was worried we were going to have the same score. I picked 42-21, so we're Perfect. Way off.
Yes, good job. It's annoying. All of this is just terribly annoying. I'm trying to have an independent score of my own free will. And I think it is. And then, no, it's there's probably going to be like 42 to 22, 21 to 20. There's a 23, an odd 25 for some reason. Any other injuries that we are looking at right now? Tom Marcus Crowley, nothing was said about him. Anything?
Nothing that, I mean, we had asked about Trey Sermon earlier in the week, and it sounds like Trey Sermon's fine. So yeah, I don't think there was any other injury news that we were kind of waiting on. And you never know, like every once in a while that Friday injury report will pop up and it's like, oh, we didn't know that was coming. But yeah, that's all we were waiting on. Well, one thing that Ryan Day talked about today that was interesting, speaking of new good or bad news that can come on a Friday, it said when those tests get run, when they run the final rapid reaction test, to make sure that someone is, can play or can't play. The one that got Justin Hilliard at the Penn State game with the false negative. Ryan Day said he leaves the building, just goes out. He's like, I'm going to go for a walk or something, and just like gets out of the building, goes for a run, goes for a walk or something, just to get out, because it's like he doesn't want to sit there and like watch the results come in, and he'll just like call every once in a while, call a staffer, and just say, okay, what's in, who's clear, like who's done, who's good to play, because this is one of those things where football coaches, we've said it over and over again, football coaches can have control over everything. That's why they all stay, players stay in a hotel on Friday night, even before a home game. Like they want to have guys in, everything as much as they can within their control. This is entirely outside of their control. Like you can have a false negative or a false positive. You can have someone who just, so you can be as careful as you want, but you could get it somewhere. Like this is something that is just completely out of their control. And you can tell it just scares the ever living heck out of Ryan Day every week.
I imagine if I were him, I would stay for at least Justin Fields. Like, just give me that one, and then I imagine like head coaches just going out and like smoking a pack of cigarettes, just out in the parking lot, just waiting for the news, and it has to be just nerve wracking. And then at least these you find out the day before, as opposed to night games where it's you get those tests that day and. Like, oh great, we don't have the guy we were expecting to have tonight. So now what do we do? And I wonder, I was thinking about this today. Like, I wonder how much, if we could take a snapshot of all of the coaches and their heads of hair before like, say at the end of last year, and then compare them to the end of this year, like it's going to be significantly grayer, I'm thinking. And we know that this job, the Ohio State job, graze you anyway. I have to imagine like the ulcers, the graying, like this is not a normal year. This is not a normal year of life. It's like 1.7 years of life or 2.7 years of life where it's taken its toll more than just the standard year because of all the concerns, the stress, not being around family. Ryan Day said it was interesting conversation about, hey, what's your preference for when you're just home watching football? How many games are you clicking through? And he's like, well, it depends, but I'll just keep it at 2 because that's easier to focus on. And, if it's a game that is important to me or we're playing that team next week, I'll stay with them and maybe switch at commercials. And then somebody asks, does your son RJ get to watch with you? And he's like, well, no, not this year. And it's just all of those stresses like that where, how people do better around other people. And when you don't have people around you, it's just another of these added taxes on just humanity this year.
I did like the fact we have a little, I don't know if that must have been in your background, the train sound. Mm-hmm. Yes. Okay, good. So we did have some extraneous noise. Good. Mm-hmm. Good. Check that off the list. Yeah. I mean, this is a year
Big O card.
This is a year that you just, I mean, like you said, the aging this year, I always think of it in terms of a car. Like you can have a car that's got 30,000 miles on it. Are those city miles or highway miles? Because if that's a car that's just, you're just commuting and you're driving around, down the interstate at 65 miles an hour and that's it. And you're just on cruise control. That's one kind of 30,000 miles. This is a highway mile. This has been like the New York City taxi year, like 30,000 miles on a New York City taxi. That car is probably just about ready to die. So yeah, this has very much been a city miles kind of year. So, but I mean, this is the lengths that coaches are going to in order to not have COVID, to avoid getting it, avoid bringing it into their program, avoid having to miss games. Ryan Day is going to, I mean, that seems like extreme lengths. If you just were sort of to explain it to someone, a year ago, you're going to say Ryan Day is going to spend next season not living at home. Like what? But guess what? This week, Mike Loxley, positive test for COVID. Maryland head coach, can't coach. And, they had their game canceled anyway. I'm not sure if he can coach next week. It depends on when that positive test actually came. But, that's with a season as high stakes as this is for Ohio State, and with as much as all the Ohio State players and coaches and families have put into, number one, getting the season played, number two, continuing to allow the season to be played, all the sacrifices they've made in terms of, not going out, not doing anything, going to the facility, doing classes online and staying at home. And that's basically it. It would be a real shame to have that, implode because of a positive COVID test. And, I think we all expect that Ohio State will get the benefit of the doubt for the college football playoff if they're undefeated, or maybe even if they win the Big Ten with one loss. But, if they've already missed one game through no fault of their own, if they miss another couple games and their record is 5-0, like you're going to have people arguing that they shouldn't get in. I don't know if those people will be successful, but if you're 5-0 or you're 4-1 and then you're 5-1 after the Big Ten championship weekend thing, you will have 5-1 probably will not get you in. 7-1 probably will, if you're you win your Big Ten championship game, but 5-1, you're starting to get into the Pac-12 kind of level of schedules where have you shown enough to actually merit inclusion, or should, a team that's Cincinnati is going to be like 10-0 after this week, right? Something like that. You've got teams who have basically put in a full season of work, and there will be people who argue that merits inclusion over a Big Ten champion if that team's only 6-0. So there's such a slim margin for error and so many ways things can go wrong because of the way the Big Ten set the season up, that they have to be almost perfect right now. And they have done their part, but as they say, it takes two to tango, and sometimes you are tangoing with the Terrapins and then you have trouble.
And Ryan Day, a couple times throughout the hour of the radio show and the lightning round with the media, would be asked a question like, well, how's the offensive line coming together? How are the backups? And he's like, I don't know. I think they're good, but until you see them play in a game, you don't know. And how are the young corners? Well, they're practicing well. But I don't know. And when you've only had 3 games and none of those games have been against Bowling Green or UNLV or Miami of Ohio, it's you don't get that opportunity to figure out what you have. And they're going to figure out pretty quickly this week, I think, what they've got against Indiana. Not that Indiana's offense is, I don't want to say it's not very good, but it's not very good. You know what I'm saying? Is it very good offense? No. But is it a good offense? Sure, it can be. Can it be a very good offense? Yes, against a bad defense. Does Ohio State have a bad defense? I don't think so. And so I expect things to be difficult for Michael Penix, who he's a gamer. That dude is tough, and he's going to do everything he can to keep Indiana in this game, to win this game. But the talent around him, and yes, Ty Freifogel blew up the receiver as like 424 yards receiving this season, except for like 342 of them have come in the last 2 weeks against Michigan and Rutgers. And the thing that we can go throughout this entire Indiana offense, and we'll get into Penix later, but through all of this, the fact that they've played 4 terrible teams, 4 bad defenses, and they still can't run the ball tells me that Indiana's going to be one-dimensional. And what do we know about Ohio State's defense playing against a one-dimensional team? That's exactly what they want.
Exactly. That's their goal, is to turn you one-dimensional. So if you're one-dimensional, that's sort of you're already there on your own. That is not a good thing. I look at this. I talked to John Blau from the Bloomington Herald-Times earlier this week, and I came away from that conversation thinking, like, I think that Indiana offensive line is going to be a problem. I went in thinking like, maybe, and came away from it going, maybe, probably. If they've got the left tackle is potentially going to miss the week again. And, that is not his blind side. Penix is a lefty, so that's not the blind side. But still, like, this Ohio State defensive end room, that is not the group you want a fill-in to be going up against. And they've got a left guard who's I think not necessarily fantastic. He was a transfer. That's that's a problem. And that's going to do is it's going to limit what Indiana can do on offense. If they can't run the ball and they can't trust the line to protect Penix on anything deep, then you get a bunch of quick game stuff in the passing game. And that can work for a while. That can work to a certain degree. But, if you're real predictable and you can't throw deep and you can't run the ball, then that narrows down what Ohio State has to do on defense quite a bit. And you're already going up against superior talent. And then if you're not making those people have to worry about too many other things, like that's when things get real ugly. Because you've seen those games where it's like the team does the quick game stuff, and it's tunnel screens and just little short crossing routes and that kind of stuff, and it works. And it's like, oh, they went right down the field. How about that? And then Ohio State adjusts, and then it's like, oh, that doesn't work. Well, what do they do after this? And it's like, well, I don't know if they have a thing to do next, and that's when you get a problem.
Indiana has scored 16 touchdowns on offense this season. 6 of them have been following a turnover where those drives were 50 yards or less. A couple of them were under 10 yards. They've had a 4-yard drive, a 6-yard touchdown drive, 16, 25, 28, and the 25-yarder was an overtime against Penn State, but 29-yard drive after an interception. And so this is not an offense that has been asked to go the distance as much as the Ohio State offense, which, aside from the Seven Banks fumble return, has scored just 1 touchdown following a turnover this year. So the bulk of their touchdown drives is seemingly start at like the 25, and then they go from there. I'm just looking; they've got 5 75-yard scoring drives this year. Ohio State does, and some obviously further than that. And this is the Ohio State offense is more than comfortable going 75 yards. It's why they don't really try to return kicks, because I'd rather go 75 than 85, and we know we can do that. Whereas Indiana, and Ryan Day said it today, they're kind of aggressive with their returns because they want to get as many free yards as possible, because I'm not sure Tom Allen is all that in love with his offense. I'm not sure how he could be, considering they're rushing for, just 110 yards a game, something like that, something really bad, and 3 yards a carry. And while Stevie Scott and Samson James are both big, tough, strong running dudes, it's kind of like the whole Leroy Horde thing. You need 1 yard, they'll get you 3. You need 5 yards, they'll get you 3. And they don't do much after that. But yeah, so for me, like this Ohio State defense, it just comes down to the secondary. And as I think I said on Mark Rogers' show or somewhere yesterday, the Ohio State secondary is not Michigan secondary, and God willing, it never will be.
Like, you have Sean Wade right there, so that's already like, put him. Just say you're going to put him on Ty Freifogel, and then you got Whop Philyor in the slot. And by the way, let's take a moment to reflect on the names on this Indiana skill unit. This is something I brought up on the morning show earlier this week, but you have Michael Penix, Ty Freifogel, Whop Philyor, Peyton Hendershot. That's just quarterback, 2 wide receivers, and a tight end. Like, those are some names, man. Like, man, those are some good names. Sorry for the digression. I don't know if they can move the ball consistently enough to score on Ohio State's defense. I think that you might get one in the first quarter before Ohio State adjusts, but if you're relying on turnovers to set up short fields, Justin Fields has not turned the ball over. Like, that has been his thing. I mean, his thing has been a bunch of stuff this year. He's done a bunch of stuff real well. One of the things he's done real well since he stepped on campus at Ohio State is not turn the ball over. I think Indiana has 10 interceptions through 4 games. Justin Fields has thrown 3 interceptions in his entire Ohio State career, his entire college career. Even going back to Georgia, he didn't throw an interception. So he had 2 against Clemson last year, 1 against Miami, I think, 2 years last year, and that was it. So there's just you cannot rely on turnovers. You can't rely on being one-dimensional. So I don't know where the points come from for Indiana. And my default assumption with Ohio State this year is you're going to have to minimally score 35 points to beat them. Minimally. Because if you really lock down the Ohio State offense, what are they scoring? 31? I mean, this is not a team you're going to beat 20-17 this year. It's just not. Ohio State is going to score too many points. They have too many weapons. Justin Fields is too good. So, I mean, unless you have a ton of people out or something like that, you're not gonna hold them under that. So, how does Indiana get to 35 points? And I don't really see a way for that to happen.
Michigan State shut out Indiana in the second half last week. Indiana, I was looking at the box score. They had 5 possessions in the second half of that game last week, and 2 of them were turnovers on downs deep inside Michigan State territory. And I don't know if the third one was a kneel down or what, but only getting 5 possessions is not good. Not being able to score in the second half of a game that it's Michigan State. Like, at least Ohio State scored 14 against Rutgers in the second half, something like that. They were at least alive, and I'm just not like, I like the individual parts of a lot of what Indiana has on offense, but when it's together, it's like you should be able to. They shouldn't be scoring 30. They should be in the 20s at most. Last year's defense would probably keep them, 17, something like that, and be completely comfortable handling whatever they have. And this defense, Marcus Williamson against Whop Philyor in the slot. We'll see how that goes. How much Josh Proctor is handling him, because against Michigan, Whop Philyor caught 11 passes, but Daxton Hill was defending him and stopping him after each catch. He had 79 yards receiving on those 11 catches, which is nothing. And if they can hold Philyor to 7 yards a catch, that's a win, no matter how many catches he has. And then you mentioned we don't know if Caleb Jones, the left tackle, will play. This is a game for the Ohio State defensive line to just create some havoc, the interior as well. I wonder, though, and I should look, like, I think Penix has maybe like 5 rushes, or like, I wanted to see how many rushes compared to sacks, because he doesn't have maybe a dozen carries this year. And I'm wondering if that's going to be part of their plan this week. I think maybe it should be. And I know, kind of like Ohio State, as long as Penix is healthy, they can do things this year. Like, as long as Justin Fields is healthy. But I also know at times Justin Fields is going to have to be part of the running game. And it kind of feels like maybe this is that time for Michael Penix to be part of the running game. And I'm not talking about 20 carries, but 8, 9 here and there to make Ohio State respect it. And that might not open up the running game, but it'll move the chains. And I think for Indiana, that's moving the chains, keeping the ball away from Ohio State. These are all winning plays.
Yeah, I mean, this may be one of those kitchen sink games for Indiana where what do they have to lose? Like, shoot your shot. This is not a game where, we stayed within 2 touchdowns. That's a good one. The boys got some good fresh air and exercise. So it was a good day all around. Like, if you want to play for the Big Ten championship, and they have a chance to play for the Big Ten championship, if they beat Ohio State, they've got a 1.5 game lead in Ohio State in the Big Ten East. So they could, that is not nothing. And, there's still some work ahead for them. They still have to play Wisconsin, which I don't think is necessarily going to go great for them. But, this is your chance. Like, this is your chance to have like the Hallmark movie moment. I mean, this is their chance to do what Purdue did a couple of years ago and have like, this is, the signature moment for Jeff Brom. This can be the signature moment for Tom Allen to beat Michigan, Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan State in the same season. Like, that does not happen. So I think they are going to shoot their shot here. Penix is not an incredible runner. He has not run at all this year, but I expect them to just, like, whatever, man, like, whatever they have to do it. And you might see, I don't know if they're going to get quite as crazy and unhinged as Rutgers did a couple weeks ago, because Rutgers has literally nothing to lose. But, I would not be surprised if you saw a crazy onside kick from Indiana at some point on Saturday. I would not be surprised if you saw Michael Penix, who has not rushed basically at all this year, rush 15 times. I would not be surprised if you saw trick plays, fake field goals, fake punts, like going forward on 4th down. Tom Allen should not be settling for field goals on 4th and 3 at the 28-yard line. Like, nope, don't do that. Do not settle for field goals on 4th and 3 at the 10-yard line. No, you have to score touchdowns. You have to play Like you do not have the talent equivalent, so you really have to kind of push it. And I'll be interested. I've always wondered with coaches with defensive backgrounds if they're really going to be willing to just kind of push their chips in and do it, because I think they're kind of more conservative by nature offensively. But this is your chance. Do it. Go for it. Like just do not leave anything on the field. Just empty that clip and see who's standing afterwards.
Well, and it worked against Penn State, going for 2 in overtime for the win. I still have them kicking 2 field goals, and it's my score of 20 because he is a defensive coach, and maybe they score early, or I have my reasons. Don't worry about it, Tom. But regarding the trick plays, was it last year the double pass that ended up with a Peyton Hendershot touchdown, which was their only score in the first half, only touchdown in the first half of that game, as Ohio State was dominating defensively in the first half of games to start the season last year as well. And so they certainly have a history of things like that against Ohio State. Defensively for Indiana, they're kind of all over the place. They come from all over the place. Their leading sacker, I believe, is cornerback Tywan Mullen, who had two sacks last week or 2.5 sacks last week. They have more sacks they have as many sacks from the corners, 3.5, as they do from the defensive line. And I think the linebackers have like 4 sacks, and then the safety has a sack. So while you look at that and you see it coming from everywhere, the key to me is it's not coming from the defensive line. And that's a good thing for Ohio State. And I think the tackles will be fine. It's just picking up those blitzes, which Justin Fields seemed to be pretty confident when we talked to him Tuesday or Wednesday, whenever it was, that Indiana doesn't do anything that he hasn't seen before. It's just they maybe do a little bit more of it, I guess. And so he seems to be pretty confident. And these blitzes are one reason why I think we might see more of Master Teague picking up those blitzes than Trey Sermon, unless if Trey Sermon is in there, maybe then he has to be the automatic hot route, something like that, because he is not the pass blocker that Teague is. And if they're bringing, they blitz the corners quite a bit. And if Sermon is that guy, then I'd rather see Teague in there protecting Justin Fields in that aspect. But if those blitzes don't get home, Tom, I don't know. And you had Ross Fulton on this morning with a good chalk talk about how Indiana blitzes, but they don't gamble.
Right. Yeah. And this goes back to something that Greg Madison said during our interviews on Wednesday, which I listened to and I was like, that seemed like a little bit of a subtweet of Don Brown, if you wanted to read it that way.
Oh, very good.
He talked about the fact that when you blitz, like this is not the old-timey blitz where it's like, oh, blitzing means we're bringing 6 or 7 guys. Now blitzing is we're just bringing different guys, and you're still bringing 5, but you're confusing the defense. So you're not overwhelming them with manpower. It's not bringing more guys than they can block. It's bringing guys from places where you're confusing them into the point where they can't block them. And that was something we talked to Ross Fulton about on the morning show on Thursday. And, that's Indiana will bring corners, like they'll bring that boundary corner to, off that short side of the field. And, and then you drop on your defensive lineman. So that's one of the reasons you maybe don't see sack numbers out of the defensive line that you might out of a normal defensive line. You bring, you've got those guys are dropping into pass coverage and you're bringing someone else. But, it is something that with a first-time starting quarterback, you could absolutely see how that would just confuse the heck out of him. And with a, new defensive line, you could see how that would absolutely confuse the heck out of him. Like Michigan's offense is like the poster boy for here's what a team that might really struggle with this looks like. Like they just 4 new offensive line starters. They had both tackles out. So it's 5 new offensive line starters. Joe Milton, first time starting quarterback. Like that's a team that's really going to struggle. Ohio State, with as much veteran depth as they have on that offensive line, with Fields having played as much as he has now, they seem like they're probably better positioned to deal with it than other teams. That does not mean that they won't get home. Indiana won't get home once or twice. That can happen. You saw that happen against Penn State where Fields got completely blindsided because there was a miscommunication up front. But if it doesn't happen a lot and it doesn't lead to turnovers, if Fields can hold on to the ball on those sacks, that's fine. Like Fields can take 3 sacks. If he doesn't turn the ball over, Ohio State still wins.
Yeah, and Indiana, I don't know what they need, +2, +3 to make this, to give themselves a chance in this one. when I look at Indiana's defense, they gave up 250 yards rushing to Penn State. I think almost half of that was Sean Clifford. He had like 117 or 119 in that one. I don't expect that from Justin Fields. But then you also look at against Michigan, they gave up 13 yards rushing, but 344 yards passing. So when I see a defense that has given up 250 yards rushing in one game, and then another game, 344 yards passing, and granted, Michigan had to throw the ball quite a bit, but they still give up, they still acquired those yards. To me, I see an Ohio State offense that we could do whatever we want. And whatever we want, meaning maybe it's just another 200 yards rushing. If they rush for 200 yards, I think this is a pretty comfortable win, knowing that Indiana has allowed, 194 yards rushing in their last 3 games combined since that Penn State game where they gave up 250 yards. So this is a pretty stingy defense. But, Tom, it's against Rutgers, Michigan, and Michigan State these last 2 weeks, which they played 4 of the 6 worst offenses in the Big Ten all season long. And yes, maybe they are contributing to that. Not really. But these are offenses that technically they are in the same league as Ohio State, but they ain't in the same league as Ohio State.
They're in the same conference as Ohio State. They're not in the same league as Ohio State. There's an important distinction there. May seem like a distinction without a difference, but you, I think, are going to see on Saturday that it is, in fact, there is a difference there. So, yeah, Indiana Indiana is a great story, and Indiana's players and coaches should feel fantastic. And being 4-0 is incredible. There's a huge achievement, and I think there's a pretty decent chance they end up 6-2, something like that this season, and. If Indiana goes 6-2 and wins that second place game in the Big Ten against, Northwestern or whoever that ends up being, and they're 7-2 and they could legitimately earn a spot in like the Cotton Bowl or something this year, which would be unbelievable. That would be incredible for Indiana. Even the Citrus Bowl for Indiana. Like, when was the last time Indiana was in a bowl that was as good as a Citrus Bowl? More than 25 years, certainly. I don't know. I don't remember. I think those Bill Malroe teams ended up going like the Independence Bowl or something.
Was there
like
a Copper Bowl in there? I think as well, wherever that was. Is that out in Arizona?
I think that was later. Yeah, that was in Tucson. But yeah, I think they had like an Independence Bowl, something like that. But
their game notes this week said the Tax Layer Bowl was the first time this past year was the first time they were in a Florida bowl game in like a long time.
Yes,
or maybe the first time.
I think it might have been the first time because I can't ever remember them in a Citrus Bowl or a Hall of Fame Bowl or anything like that back in the day. So, yeah, this is a season that Indiana should feel really, really good about. And it's very easy to say, well, it took a terrible Michigan season and a terrible Michigan State season and a terrible Penn State season, and yep, the old Indiana would have blown some of those games, and they haven't done that. So, I don't think they're going to do it in Columbus. I don't think they have the horsepower to stay with Ohio State through 4 quarters. But this is a team, there are a lot of teams in the Big Ten this year that you just look at and you're like, okay, this is going to be an enormous waste of time, to have Ohio State waste their, spend one of within a few precious Saturdays just bludgeoning this team into the ground. This is not one of those teams. This is a very good team. And, I don't know if they're a top 10 team in the nation, but they're a top 15, 20 team in the nation probably. And, for Indiana, that is an unbelievable achievement.
Yeah, and I don't know where I've said this before this week, but every quarterback Indiana has faced this year, save for Noah Vedral, has been benched at some point this season for poor play. And the Rutgers quarterback, Noah, was benched at Ohio State, but that was just because the game was over and they didn't, there's no point in keeping him out there. So this could conceivably be the first quarterback they face who won't get benched this season for poor play. Maybe. I don't. I don't want to presume that Justin Fields is going to be incredible every week or just good every week. Tom, remember last year when we were telling people, no, he may only go like 10 for 22 this week, so just be prepared. And it never happened. And maybe next year in the NFL when he's playing for, I don't know, Jacksonville, then maybe he'll have some rough games, but I think he's going to be fine in this one. I feel good about the running game as well, which is strange because I don't know that I felt good about them since maybe week 2 or something like that. So I think the running game is starting to figure things out, and and I've been watching quite a bit of Indiana all week, just having it on while I'm doing stuff, and I'll look up and like, oh, there's another open receiver going against the Indiana secondary that the throw is terrible and not near anybody. Oh, there's an interception on a bad throw. And so I think Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, Jameson Williams can get behind these guys or get around them, even with their the two safeties that they have. And Justin Fields has the arm, the accuracy, the want to get the ball there. And I think the passing game will do pretty well also. But this is an Indiana team that's just it won't quit like a Michigan or an Ohio State. just just throwing it out there, but they know, Ohio State knows they can't just get up 17-0 and hey, game over, because that's not what Indiana does, and it has to be something that Ohio State no longer does.
Yeah, they have to. Ohio State, and I think Ohio State's taken this seriously enough that they're not going to do that. And I mean, Day has talked about the fact this week. I think that was on Tuesday. He talked about the fact that Indiana has shown that they're not going to just stay down. Like you have to finish the job against them. You can't just get up and say, okay, and now we're done. Like, nope. If the clock does not say 0 in the fourth quarter, you are not done. You have to finish. You have to. They are the bad guy in all of the action movies where you think they're dead and you turn around to hug your family, and then all of a sudden there they are behind you in the background, sitting up and grabbing their gun. It's like, nope, you have to finish them. And I think Ohio State recognizes that. I think they know that this is not a team that is going to, go down and stay down the way that I don't know, to pick an example at random, like the Wisconsin-Michigan game last week, for example. That was a team that Michigan went down, and it was like, oh no, they are dead. They are dead. Like people went by and kind of poked the corpse with a stick, and nope, the corpse didn't move. It is really dead. And that is not Indiana. Like Indiana's going to stick with it and keep challenging you. And if you make a mistake and you throw a silly interception and you set them up with a short field, all of a sudden 28-7 turns into 28-14 or 28-20 or whatever it is, and then all of a sudden it's a game again. So and Ohio State has seen Indiana give them trouble in the past. You do not have to go very far into the past to see games where Ohio State won them, but it was like, ooh, that was not, Ohio State had won 2013, maybe, that was in Bloomington, that was like 52-49. That 2014 game, Ohio State was losing in the third quarter before Jalen Marshall exploded in the fourth quarter. And, Ohio State could have lost their national championship in 2014 just by not pulling away at the end of that Indiana game. That was the week before Michigan. And got to tell you, I walked out of that stadium. I was there with my daughter, who was very, very young at the time. She was 4. So we left in the third quarter, and Indiana was in the process of scoring the go-ahead touchdown, I think, in the third quarter. And when I walked out of that stadium, I did not think, this is a team that's about to win the national championship in 4 games. Like, nope, that is not how I saw that shaken out. So there's enough teachable moments, I think, for this Ohio State coaching staff to not overlook Indiana and not fail to finish the drill.
Even that 2015 game where Ezekiel Elliott had to close it out with like the 55, the 65, the 75-yard run, that was a 34-27 win. Mm-hmm. And it's just, everybody remembers the legend of Xander Diamant and all of these other people. And so, not keeping they won't take things lightly. Tom, before we start to wrap up here, Antoine Randall L., I saw this in the Indiana game notes, for the 9th year is on the ballot for College Football Hall of Fame. Should he be in the College Football Hall of Fame?
Don't you normally have to have won, one of the major awards or something?
You have to be a first-team All-American.
Okay.
I'm guessing he was like all-purpose as a freshman or sophomore or junior. And then they tried to move him to quarterback, or tried to move him to receiver as a senior to prepare for the NFL, which, granted, Gibran Hamden, their quarterback, was outstanding and worth moving Antoine Randall L. for. But the reason I bring this up is because he was a Hall of Famer in my fantasy league, and I figure that's pretty commensurate to the College Football Hall of Fame, because the dude was first of all, he was insanely fun to watch, and he was also fun to play and say football.
Did did Jimmy Clausen announce his commitment to Notre Dame at the Hall of Fame for your fantasy league? Because I guess he did not. In which case, not a real Hall of Fame. That is how I judge halls of fame. And
correct.
Your hall falls short. So no, I do not recognize your Hall of Fame. I mean, Antoine Randall he's one of those like really Indiana players, and like Alex Smith, the running back earlier in the 90s, and Anthony Thompson in the 80s. Like they were guys who like really stood out because it was like, this guy plays for Indiana, like really? And he was an absolute dynamo. And he's one of those people that if he was playing now, he probably would be a far, like he would have been scouted much better probably. And his talent would have been recognized. Like he and Cordell Stewart, or like some of those guys are like, man, that guy would be an absolute super duper duper star right now. And back then it was like, well, he's that good guy on Indiana, and they're going 5-6 every year. And who was their coach back then? I can picture it. They had a media guide, and the cover of the media guide was that coach, and there was grass stains because they'd gone from turf to grass that year.
What was that?
Yeah, there are a lot of interchangeable Indiana coaches, but it was I think that was before. It was the guy before Jerry DiNardo, and I cannot for the life of me remember. There was someone between Bill Mallory and Jerry DiNardo, but whoever it was, they were just like 5-6 every year. It was like, oh, is this the year Antoine Randall will get to go to a bowl game? No, they were 5-6 every year, and it just never happened. And he's one of those like kind of forgotten, underappreciated guys who, you look back now and he is probably he was so much better than the kids today would ever believe.
Mm-hmm. Well, and he also had a really good running back, LeVron Williams. Those two were an outstanding 1-2 punch and were fun to watch. Tom, you got anything else? It looks like you're looking something up. Are you trying to find the coach?
I am looking.
Bill McCartney? No, he was at Colorado.
Would you believe it was Cam Cameron?
Cam Cameron. There you go.
I knew there was one between Bill Mallory and Jerry DiNardo. Yes. Yep.
Yeah, we should have known that one.
And his career record: 18-37 and 12-28 in the Big Ten. That's right. 1-4 against Purdue. Ooh.
You can't go 1-4 against Purdue and expect to get an extension.
I mean, that was the Joe Tiller Purdue. Like there was some bad timing on his part there because he was there for Joe Tiller and Drew Brees and those guys. But still, like
that was a fun time when Joe Tiller came in and brought the forward pass to the Big Ten. But we don't need to get into that today. But I
we'll save that for our 600th show.
Yes, thank you. So yes, we are wrapping up our 300th show. Tom, did you have anything else that you wanted to add before we go?
No, just thank you guys for listening. Thank you guys for your support over the years. We would not have done 300 shows if there weren't people listening and enjoying and giving us good feedback and giving us good questions when we ask you for questions. And so we do greatly appreciate all of that from you guys, and hope you continue to enjoy the show in the future.
Yeah, if there had not been feedback, I would have stopped at 250. I'd been, you know what? This just isn't working out. Nobody's listening, and the only people who do listen are asking for directions on how to get away from listening. And so
sounds like that's a podcast coached by Jim Harbaugh. Quit.
And I should also mention, after that Wisconsin game Saturday night, Tom texted me. He's like, hey, do you want to do an instant reaction Michigan podcast? And of course I was like, I've been drinking too much and I'm in no condition. And now looking back, it's like, well, maybe that's the best time to do one. But of course we didn't. And I feel wiser for it.
Episode title: Michigan Monday Instant Reaction Emergency Podcast, and another thing.
6 hours later. And then you've got like 10 episodes worth of one episode to listen to about a team that you don't really even care about. So that's, but we decided not to. Maybe next time we will. So that'll do it. Want to thank everybody for listening. Thank you all for watching who are watching. Remind you to check out BuckeyeScoop.com where you'll find all kinds of information. Tom, I hear there's like gift cards and this is a good time to maybe a Christmas gift for a loved one.
Yes, if you are in the mood to buy something for someone, guess what? Turns out this is not a great time to go out to the stores, according to according to the folks in charge. So consider not going out to the mall this year, and get someone a Buckeye Scoop membership instead. Like you don't need more crap. Like just more stuff to clean around, more stuff to throw out 8 months from now. So instead of crap you won't use, get a membership to BuckeyeScoop.com. You can give one to a loved one. You can ask when someone asks, "What do you want for Christmas?" You have an answer. A membership to BuckeyeScoop.com. We do them as a monthly membership or an annual membership. An annual membership would be a great thing to get. My in-laws always asked, "What do I want for Christmas?" And I would always ask for like a subscription to something because I don't need more stuff. And then the subscription renews every year at the same time, and like then the next year they don't have to ask you. It's just like, yeah, do that again. That's great. So have your in-laws get you a subscription to BuckeyeScoop.com, and you'll have access to our incredible team of insiders, our Ask the Insiders board. It has been a ton of stuff this week. Nevada Buck has had really interesting information from inside Ohio State practice, as well as on 5-star 2022 quarterback Quinn Ewers, who is the number 2 overall player in the class, decommitted from Texas recently, and information that Ohio State fans may find interesting on that board on that topic this week. So you can find that all at BuckeyeScoop.com.
I thought you were going to say that you ask for like a subscription every year from your in-laws, but it's a different subscription every year because they're not sure how to cancel the previous subscription. So now you've got like 18 magazines and websites that the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, all of this stuff, and it's great because nobody knows how to turn those off, and it's just it'd be the sign that you are a bad person if you did that.
Christmas, it's like compounding interest with Christmas gifts. It's fantastic every year. No, you got me that last year. Get me something different this year. Yeah.
All right, that'll do it. Thank you all for listening, and we will talk to you guys later.